Ryan Carter had seen a lot of strange things in his life, but nothing like this. It started as a streak of silver fire in the sky, cutting through the darkness like a falling star. At first, he thought it was a meteor. Then he noticed something was wrong. It wasn't tumbling. It was controlled. Whatever it was crashing fast, heading straight for the woods behind his cabin. Ryan barely had time to grab his flashlight and run outside before the explosion shook the ground. A column of smoke and fire rose above the trees, and the sharp scent of burning metal filled the air. His heart pounded. Was it a plane? A satellite? Something worse. He sprinted into the forest, pushing past branches and fallen logs. His boots crunched over dry leaves and dirt as he followed the glow of the wreckage. When he reached the crash site, he stopped dead in his tracks. It wasn't a plane. It wasn't anything human. Before him lay a sleek, dark silver pod, half buried in the earth. Its surface pulsed with dim blue lights, almost alive, like a breathing creature. Strange symbols glowed faintly along its sides, flickering as if they were failing. The metal wasn't burned or broken. It looked grown rather than built. Ryan stepped closer, his breath shallow. Then, with a soft hiss, the pod split open. Inside, cradled in a web of glowing strands, was a woman. But not just any woman. Her skin shimmered a soft silver blue, smooth like polished stone. Her long, white gold hair flowed around her face, strands lifting, as if touched by an unseen wind. Her eyes, when they fluttered open, were deep violet, glowing faintly even in the dim light. She was tall, elegant, and utterly otherworldly. Ryan's body tensed. Was she alive? Was she dangerous? The woman stirred, her fingers twitching as she tried to push herself up. She winced, as if in pain. Then she turned her glowing eyes to him. "You are the one," she whispered, her voice soft but powerful, like distant thunder. "Only you can restore my throne." Ryan blinked. What? He took a step back, his mind struggling to keep up. Just a minute ago, he was drinking coffee on his porch, thinking about fixing his truck. Now there was an alien queen in his backyard, talking about thrones and destinies. What? He managed. The woman tried to stand but faltered, gripping the edge of the pod for support. Ryan instinctively reached out, catching her before she collapsed. Her skin was warm. That surprised him. He didn't know what he expected. Cold, maybe like metal or stone. But she felt real. Alive. She looked up at him again, her violet eyes searching his face. "There is no time," she murmured. "They will come for me soon." A chill ran down Ryan's spine. "Who?" he asked. Before she could answer, a sound ripped through the night. A deep, guttural screech that didn't belong to anything on Earth. The trees shook as something big moved through the forest, coming closer. The woman gripped his arm. "They have found me." Ryan swallowed hard. He had no idea what was happening, but one thing was clear. This night was about to get a whole lot worse. Ryan's breath hitched as the strange, guttural screech echoed through the trees. Whatever was coming, it was big. The ground trembled beneath his feet, and a sharp metallic scent filled the air. The alien woman, still weak from the crash, tightened her grip on his arm. Her violet eyes flickered with urgency. "We must move," she whispered. "Now." Ryan didn't argue. He hooked an arm around her waist, supporting her weight as they hurried away from the wreckage. The underbrush crackled beneath their feet as they stumbled through the darkened forest, their only light coming from the soft glow of her skin. Behind them, something massive crashed through the trees. Twigs snapped, and deep, guttural breathing filled the air. Ryan risked a glance over his shoulder, and froze. A shape emerged from the darkness. It wasn't human. Towering nearly 8 feet tall, the creature had thick, black exoskeletal armor covering its body, like a fusion of flesh and machine. Sharp, razor-like limbs extended from its arms, and its head had no eyes, only a gaping, fang-lined maw that pulsed with eerie red light. Ryan's stomach twisted. That thing wasn't from Earth. The woman tensed against him. They are the Vorax, she said, her voice low. They are hunters. They will not stop until I am dead. Ryan didn't know what the Vorax were, but he had no plans of letting one get close enough to explain. Can you run? He asked. The woman nodded weakly. I will try. Ryan turned, gripping her wrist. Then let's go. They bolted. The Vorax let out a piercing shriek, the sound rattling through Ryan's skull. Trees shattered behind them as the creature gave chase, its movements unnaturally fast. The forest blurred past as Ryan pushed himself forward, his heart hammering in his chest. They wouldn't make it. The thing was gaining ground. Fast. Ryan could hear its heavy footsteps pounding closer, its ragged breaths tearing through the air. Then suddenly, the woman yanked him sideways. This way, she gasped. Ryan barely had time to react before she pulled him through a gap in the trees, revealing a narrow ravine hidden beneath the thick undergrowth. Without hesitation, she leaped. Ryan's body moved before his brain could argue. He followed, landing hard on the rocky ground below. His knees buckled, but he forced himself up. Above them, the Vorax screeched in frustration, skidding to a halt at the ravine's edge. It peered down, its red maw pulsing, its breath ragged. Then, with a frustrated hiss, it turned and disappeared back into the darkness. Ryan exhaled, his muscles still tense. What the hell was that? The woman, still breathing heavily, turned to him. They are sent to kill me, she said, to erase my existence. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, still trying to process everything. And who exactly are you? She straightened, regaining some of her regal composure. Despite her torn clothing and weakened state, there was something commanding about her presence, like a queen who had just stepped off a battlefield. My name is Silara, she said, lifting her chin. I am the last rightful ruler of the Zyphera Empire. Ryan blinked. You're a queen. Yes, she said. And you are the only one who can help me reclaim my throne. Ryan opened his mouth, ready to argue, but then he caught the look in her eyes. It wasn't just desperation. It was determination. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. Ryan sat on a moss-covered rock, trying to catch his breath. His heart was still pounding from the chase. Just an hour ago, he was living a normal, quiet life. Now, he was hiding in a ravine with an alien queen, being hunted by a nightmare creature. Silara knelt beside him, her glowing violet eyes scanning the dark forest above. Her white-gold hair shimmered faintly in the dim moonlight. She looked exhausted but focused. Ryan exhaled sharply. So let me get this straight. You're a queen. And those things, those Vorax, are after you. Silara turned to him. Yes, she said, her voice calm but firm. The Zyphera Empire once thrived under my rule. But there was a coup. My own general, Valor, betrayed me. He allied with the Vorax. Biomechanical assassins bred for one purpose: eliminate threats. Ryan frowned. And you're the threat. I am the last true heir, she said. As long as I live, I am a danger to Valor's stolen rule. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, trying to process everything. Okay, so they want you dead. But why did you say I could help? I'm just a guy living in a cabin in the woods. Silara hesitated. Then, she reached into the folds of her torn cloak and pulled out a small, glowing crystal. It pulsed with a deep blue light, like a tiny beating heart. This, she said, is a royal core. It is the key to my power, and it has chosen you. Ryan stared at the crystal. Wait. What? She held it up, and as she did, the blue glow flickered, then pulsed brighter when she moved it closer to Ryan. Silara nodded. It reacts to you. Ryan shook his head. That doesn't make any sense. The royal core only bonds with those who possess a rare energy, Silara explained. It will not activate for just anyone. But you, somehow, it has linked itself to you. Ryan leaned back, feeling the weight of the moment settle in. Let me get this straight. You crash-landed in my backyard, ran from some monster, and now you're telling me I'm, what? Some kind of chosen one. Selara met his gaze. Yes. Ryan let out a dry laugh. Great, just great. A rustling sound echoed from above. Selara's expression hardened. We cannot stay here. The Vorax are hunters. If one has found me, more will come. Ryan exhaled. So what's the plan? She looked up at the sky. I have a ship hidden not far from here. It was damaged in the escape, but if we can reach it, I may be able to repair it. Ryan crossed his arms. And then what? Fly off to space and overthrow an empire. Selara's gaze was steady. Yes. Ryan stared at her. She wasn't joking. A normal person would have walked away by now. Called the government. Let someone else handle this mess. But Ryan wasn't normal. And something deep inside him told him this was bigger than just one runaway alien. He sighed. Fine. Let's get to your ship. Selara gave a small nod. Stay close. As they climbed out of the ravine, Ryan glanced at the glowing royal core in her hand. He still didn't know why it had chosen him. But one thing was certain. His life would never be the same again. Ryan moved quickly through the trees, Selara right beside him. The night air was cool, but the tension in his chest made it hard to breathe. Every shadow felt like it was hiding another Vorax, waiting to strike. Selara's movements were smooth and precise. Even though she was still weak, her white gold hair shimmered faintly, and her violet eyes scanned the forest with sharp focus. How much farther? Ryan whispered. Not far, Selara said. It is hidden beyond that ridge. Ryan glanced behind them. The forest was eerily quiet now. Too quiet. They reached the top of the ridge and looked down. Below, nestled between towering rock formations, was a sleek silver craft covered in moss and fallen leaves. It was shaped like a crescent, with elegant curves and faint blue lights pulsing along its hull. Ryan let out a low whistle. That's your ship? Selara nodded. It is damaged, but I can fix it if we have time. Ryan had a feeling time was exactly what they didn't have. They scrambled down the rocky slope and approached the ship. Selara ran a hand over its surface, and a thin doorway appeared, sliding open with a soft hum. Ryan hesitated before stepping inside. The interior was surprisingly intact, smooth white walls lined with glowing symbols, a curved control panel in the front, and strange floating screens flickering in midair. Selara moved quickly, tapping her fingers against the controls. The ship hummed to life, and soft blue light bathed the cabin. Will this thing still fly? Ryan asked. Selara frowned. The engines are functional, but the power core is unstable. I must realign the energy grid before we can take off. Ryan exhaled. All right. What do you need me to do? Selara looked at him, a hint of surprise in her expression. You would help me. Ryan crossed his arms. Look, I don't know why this royal core picked me, or why I'm caught up in an intergalactic war, but one thing's clear. If we don't get out of here, those things will find us. So yeah, I'm in. For the first time, Selara's expression softened. Thank you, Ryan. Before Ryan could respond, a loud, inhuman screech shattered the air. Ryan spun around. Outside, red lights flickered in the darkness. The Vorax were here. Selara's eyes widened. They tracked me. Ryan's pulse hammered. Can the ship's weapons stop them? Selara's fingers flew over the controls. The defense systems are offline. I need 5 minutes to restore the energy grid. Ryan gritted his teeth. 5 minutes was too long. Then his eyes landed on something near the entrance. A sleek, metallic weapon mounted on the wall. It looked like a rifle, but its design was unlike anything he'd seen before. Can I use that? He asked, pointing. Selara hesitated, then nodded. It is a pulse blaster. It will work against the Vorax, if you can aim. Ryan grabbed the weapon and felt a surge of energy course through it as his fingers wrapped around the handle. The royal core in Solara's hands pulsed in response. No time to question it. He turned and sprinted outside. The first Vorax was already charging toward the ship, its razor-sharp limbs gleaming under the moonlight. Ryan raised the blaster and fired. A blue energy pulse shot from the barrel, hitting the Vorax square in the chest. The creature shrieked and staggered back, its exoskeleton smoking where the blast hit. Ryan's hands were shaking, but he didn't stop. He fired again, forcing the creature to retreat into the trees. More glowing red eyes flickered in the darkness. There were more coming. Ryan set his jaw. Solara, whatever you're doing, do it faster. Inside the ship, Solara worked desperately, the glow from the control panel reflecting off her determined face. Almost there, she called. Ryan tightened his grip on the blaster. He just had to hold the line, because if they didn't escape now, they never would. Ryan's hands were slick with sweat as he gripped the pulse blaster. The Vorax weren't backing down. More of them crept through the trees, their glowing red eyes watching, their sharp limbs clicking against the ground. The one he had shot was still alive, but it had retreated, wounded but not dead. Now there were at least 4 more, their dark, insect-like bodies blending into the night. Inside the ship, Solara was working as fast as she could. The controls glowed under her fingertips as she repaired the energy grid. The hum of the ship was growing stronger, but she wasn't finished yet. "Ryan," she shouted. 2 more minutes. Ryan swallowed hard. 2 minutes felt like forever. A Vorax lunged. Ryan fired. The pulse blast hit the creature in the chest, sending it skidding back, its exoskeleton smoking. But the others didn't hesitate. They were learning. One of them darted sideways, faster than Ryan expected. Before he could react, it was almost on him. Ryan threw himself to the ground as the creature's claws sliced through the air right where his head had been. He rolled, aimed, and fired point-blank. The Vorax screeched as the blast sent it flying backward. Ryan gasped for breath. He had never fought for his life before. Not like this. He barely had time to think. His instincts took over, moving his body before his mind could process what was happening. Another Vorax leaped from the side. Ryan spun, but it was too late. Boom! A pulse blast hit the creature from behind, sending it crashing into a tree. Ryan whipped around. Solara stood at the entrance of the ship, holding a sleek silver pistol, her violet eyes glowing with determination. "Get inside," she ordered. Ryan didn't argue. He sprinted up the ramp just as another Vorax lunged. Solara fired again, forcing the creature back. The ship's door sealed shut behind them. Ryan collapsed against the wall, chest heaving. "Please tell me we're good to go." Solara ran to the controls. The ship's core pulsed, fully activated. "Yes," she said, fingers moving quickly over the glowing symbols. "But the engines will need time to warm up." Ryan groaned. "Of course they do." Outside, the Vorax slammed against the hull, their claws screeching against the metal. The ship shook under the force. "They're trying to break in," Ryan said. "They won't," Solara replied, her voice steady. "The hull is strong. They cannot breach it." Ryan wasn't convinced. What if they find a weak spot? Solara didn't answer right away. She tapped the control panel again, and a holographic map of the area appeared. "The moment the engines reach full power, we take off," she said. "Hold on." Ryan barely had time to grab onto a metal railing before the ship lurched upward. Outside, the Vorax screeched in anger. They leaped at the craft, but it was too late. The ship rose above the trees, shaking as the engines roared to life. Ryan peered out through a small viewing panel. Below, the Vorax swarmed the clearing, their glowing red eyes watching as their prey escaped into the sky. The ship shot upward, piercing through the clouds. Ryan finally let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. "We made it." Solara didn't respond right away. She was staring at the controls, her jaw tight. Ryan frowned. "What's wrong?" Silera turned to him, her expression serious. "They will not stop hunting us," she said. "We need to leave this planet. Now." Ryan stared at her. Leave Earth. He had saved her life. Now she was asking him to leave everything behind. His family. His home. Was he really ready for that? The decision had to be made. Fast. Ryan sat in the co-pilot's seat, his heart pounding as Solara worked the controls. The ship moved smoothly through the sky, climbing higher and higher. Soon, the clouds thinned, and the deep blackness of space stretched before them. He had never imagined this. Leaving Earth. His whole life had been spent in one small town. His backyard, his job at the hardware store, his car that barely ran. It all felt like another world now, fading away as he looked out into the endless void. Silara's voice pulled him back. "We need to make a decision," she said, her violet eyes locked onto his. "The Vorax will not stop. If I stay here, they will return. And next time, they will come in greater numbers." Ryan swallowed hard. He already knew what she was going to say. "The safest option," she continued, "is for us to leave this system, to go somewhere they cannot follow." Ryan let out a slow breath. Leave Earth, for good. He stared out the viewing panel. The blue curve of his home planet was shrinking behind them. His mind raced. What about his parents? His friends? Would he ever see them again? But then he thought about what had just happened. The Vorax had attacked his home. They hadn't cared that he was just a normal guy. If Solara had never shown up, they wouldn't have bothered with him. But now they saw him as a threat, someone who had interfered with their plans. Even if he went back, would he ever be safe? Solara waited, her hands gripping the navigation controls. She wasn't pushing him, but he could feel the weight of her words. Finally, he exhaled. "What happens if I go with you?" he asked. Solara tilted her head slightly, as if studying him. "We escaped," she said. "We travel to one of the outer colonies where I have allies. There I can begin gathering forces to reclaim my throne." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "You make that sound simple." She smirked. "It won't be. But with you by my side, I have a chance." Ryan leaned back in the chair, rubbing his face. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't a hero. He was just a guy who had been mowing his lawn when an alien queen crashed into his yard. And yet, somewhere deep inside, a strange feeling was rising. Excitement. He had faced down deadly aliens, fought for his life, and now he had a chance to do something more than just exist in a small town. The question was, did he have the courage to take it? He looked at Solara again. She was strong, determined, and powerful, but she wasn't invincible. She needed someone to help her, someone to trust. And somehow, she had chosen him. Ryan took a deep breath. "All right," he said. "Let's go." Solara's lips parted slightly in surprise. But then, a small, knowing smile formed. "You won't regret this," she said, turning back to the controls. Ryan wasn't so sure. But it was too late now. The ship's thrusters roared to life, and Solara entered hyperspace coordinates. The stars outside stretched into long streaks of light as the ship jumped into the unknown. Ryan gripped the armrests, his stomach flipping as reality bent around them. And just like that, Earth was gone. Ryan sat back in the co-pilot's seat, his hands gripping the armrests as the ship shot through hyperspace. Stars stretched into glowing streaks outside the viewport, an endless tunnel of swirling blue and white light. He let out a slow breath. He had really done it. Earth was gone. His house, his job, everything he knew, left behind. And now, he was traveling through the universe beside an exiled alien queen. Solara focused on the controls, her delicate fingers gliding over the glowing interface. She looked calm, but Ryan could see the tension in her shoulders. "Where exactly are we going?" he asked. "To an old ally," she said. Someone who may help us. If he still lives. Ryan frowned. That's not very comforting. She glanced at him. Welcome to my world. The ship trembled slightly, and Ryan's stomach flipped. Silara frowned. Something's wrong. Ryan sat up. Define wrong. She quickly scanned the displays. Someone is trying to pull us out of hyperspace. His heart pounded. That's a thing that can happen. Before she could answer, the ship lurched violently. The stars outside twisted and blurred, then snapped back into normal space with a sudden jolt. Alarms blared. The ship's lights flickered. Ryan blinked at the screen in front of him. Outside the viewport, a massive dark ship loomed ahead. It was sleek and jagged, with sharp, angular wings. Dark energy crackled along its hull. Silara's expression hardened. The Vorax, she said. Ryan felt his pulse spike. They found us. They never stopped hunting, she muttered. Hold on. Before Ryan could brace himself, the ship jerked sideways. Silara swung the controls, trying to maneuver, but the enemy ship was already locking onto them. A deep, eerie voice crackled through the speakers. Silara of Ilfar, surrender your vessel. You cannot escape. Silara's jaw clenched. I know that voice, she murmured. Ryan swallowed hard. Who is it? Commander Xyros, she said. He was once one of my father's greatest warriors. Now, he serves the Vorax. Ryan stared at the looming warship. It was 20 times the size of their small vessel. This was a fight they couldn't win. We can't fight them, he said. Silara didn't answer. Instead, she took a deep breath, closed her eyes for a second, then suddenly slammed a switch. The ship's engines roared. She grabbed Ryan's arm. Come with me. She sprinted toward the back of the ship, Ryan racing behind her. What's the plan? He gasped. We're abandoning ship, she said. Ryan's eyes widened. That sounds even worse than fighting. Silara didn't slow down. She reached a control panel, entered a command, and a hatch slid open, revealing a sleek escape pod. Ryan hesitated. Are you sure about this? Silara met his eyes. Do you trust me? Ryan's stomach flipped. But looking at her, at the fire in her violet eyes, he knew the answer. Yeah, he said. I do. She grabbed his hand and pulled him inside. The pod sealed shut. Outside, the enemy ship closed in. And then, boom, a sudden explosion rocked their ship. Ryan barely had time to shout before the escape pod blasted away, spinning into the void. Their ship, the only thing keeping them safe, was gone. And now, they were just two people, drifting in space, with the Vorax hunting them down. The escape pod tumbled through the vast darkness of space. Ryan gripped the seat's edges, his heart pounding. Stars whirled past the small viewport, and for a moment, all he could think about was how small they were out here, just two souls floating in the void. Silara worked fast, her fingers moving over the holographic controls. I can stabilize us, she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands were tight with tension. Ryan exhaled. That's good. That's really good. The pod stopped spinning, but now they were just drifting. Ryan ran a hand through his hair. Okay, not to panic, but we just lost our ship, and there's an evil empire trying to kill us. Silara gave him a quick look. I said not to panic. Ryan opened his mouth, then froze as red warning lights flashed inside the pod. Silara's expression darkened. They've locked onto us, she said. Ryan's stomach dropped. Through the viewport, he could see the Vorax warship getting closer. Its jagged form cut through space like a shadow, its dark energy crackling along its hull. Any chance they just want to talk? Ryan asked. Silara ignored him. Her violet eyes narrowed as she scanned the controls. Then, suddenly, she tensed. There's a planet nearby, she said. Ryan blinked. Is that good or bad? Good, if we survive the landing. Before he could protest, she slammed a command, and the escape pod lurched forward. The small craft angled downward, speeding toward the distant blue-green planet. The Vorax warship chased after them, its cannons glowing as it prepared to fire. Ryan gritted his teeth. I really hate space battles. The pod plunged into the planet's atmosphere. Flames streaked along its sides as it burned through the sky, shaking violently. We're coming in too fast, Ryan shouted. Silara grabbed his hand. Brace yourself. Impact. The pod crashed through thick jungle, slamming through branches and foliage before finally hitting the ground with a bone-rattling jolt. Silence. Smoke curled from the wrecked pod. Leaves fluttered down. Ryan groaned. Still alive? Silara exhaled, rubbing her forehead. Barely. Ryan pried the hatch open. Outside, tall alien trees loomed overhead, glowing with strange bioluminescent lights. The air smelled fresh and electric, charged with an energy he didn't recognize. This is beautiful, he murmured. Silara stepped beside him, her gaze scanning the jungle. It won't be for long. Ryan followed her eyes and froze. Through the trees, shadows moved. A group of tall, armored figures stepped forward. Their silver weapons gleamed under the alien moonlight. Ryan swallowed. Friends of yours? Silara straightened. They are the last of my people. The leader, a warrior with piercing golden eyes, removed his helmet. His gaze landed on Silara, and for the first time since they met, Ryan saw her smile. Princess, the warrior said, you live. Ryan blinked. Wait, Princess. Silara turned to him. I didn't have time to explain. Ryan stared at her. All this time, she had called herself an exiled queen. But now he realized something. She wasn't just any queen. She was the last royal hope of her people. And now, with the Vorax hunting them, Ryan knew the real fight had just begun. The end, or the beginning.